every zombie category. Night of the Living Dead introduced the world to the classic Romero zombie, slow-moving, mindless corpses reanimated through unexplained means. These shambling hordes of the undead became the template that defined zombie fiction for decades. What makes these zombies truly terrifying isn't their individual threat, but their never-ending drive. They don't need rest, they don't feel fear, and will never stop pursuing the living. Their slow, inevitable approach creates a suffocating sense of dread, and survivors realize there's nowhere to truly hide. Most disturbing is how Romero used these monsters as mirrors for humanity itself, reflecting our own capacity for mindless consumption and societal breakdown when faced with crisis. 28 days later dramatically reimagined what a zombie could be by introducing the fast zombie. These aren't technically undead, but living humans infected with the rage virus. Unlike their shambling predecessors, these infected move with a terrifying speed and aggression, overwhelming victims within seconds. What makes them uniquely frightening is how they strip away the one advantage humans traditionally had against zombies: outrunning them. The rapid collapse of society depicted in these films speaks to our fear of how quickly civilization might unravel when faced with a sufficiently viral threat. The primal, animalistic rage of these infected suggests something disturbingly close to our own nature, merely unleashed from societal constraints. The signal presents a haunting version of the techno-zombie, humans transformed into violent killers after exposure to a mysterious transmission. These technologically created zombies represent our modern anxieties about connectivity and information. Unlike traditional zombies, the horror stems not from decay but from the corruption of humanity through our own creations. What makes techno-zombies particularly disturbing is how they reflect our increasing dependence on technology and the vulnerability this creates. The idea that our most ubiquitous devices could become vectors for our destruction taps into deep contemporary fears about losing control of our technological creations. Matango features a unique form of fungal zombies, humans transformed after consuming mysterious mushrooms on an isolated island. Unlike virus-based zombies, the fungal transformation is gradual, allowing victims to witness their own horrifying metamorphosis. What makes fungal zombies uniquely terrifying is how they represent the earth itself turning against humanity using one of nature's most ancient organisms as a weapon. This slow, inevitable transformation forces victims to experience their own loss of humanity, creating psychological horror alongside the physical. Most disturbing is how the fungus doesn't simply kill its hosts but uses them as a vessel to spread itself further, representing nature's efficient reclamation of human bodies. The Last of Us presents a terrifyingly plausible pandemic through the Cordyceps fungus zombie. Based on real-world parasitic fungi that control insect behavior, these zombies represent evolutionary horror rather than supernatural threats. What makes the Cordyceps zombies uniquely disturbing is how they transform through distinct stages, from the recently infected runners to the blind echolocating clickers to the final bloater form covered in fungal plates. These zombies aren't just mindless. They're the result of a calculated evolutionary strategy by an organism that has perfectly adapted to use humans as hosts. Most horrifying is how the infection warps the human body into something that serves the fungus's reproductive needs, creating a grotesque fusion of human and fungus that violates our sense of bodily autonomy. I Am Legend portrays the hemocyte, vampiric creatures resulting from a cancer cure gone wrong. Unlike traditional zombies, these beings maintain intelligence and organize themselves into a new society. What makes hemocytes uniquely frightening is how they represent not just humanity's end, but its replacement by something potentially superior. They hunt at night with predatory efficiency, using coordinated tactics against survivors. Most disturbing is how they force us to question who the real monsters are, the transformed majority establishing a new world order or the few remaining humans trying to destroy them to restore the old world. Warm Bodies presents a radical reimagining of zombies through the conscious zombie. These undead retain fragments of their humanity, including limited thought and the potential for emotional growth. What makes conscious zombies fascinating is how they challenge the traditional zombie narrative by suggesting the possibility of redemption and recovery. Unlike mindless threats, these zombies create moral complexity by forcing survivors to confront the humanity still present in their transformed loved ones. Most interesting is how they explore the nature of humanity itself, suggesting that empathy and connection, rather than a beating heart, might be what truly defines being human. Reanimator introduces the mad science zombie, corpses reanimated through a glowing green serum developed by an obsessed scientist. Unlike viral or supernatural zombies, these creations exist solely because of human hubris and the dangerous pursuit of knowledge beyond natural limits. What makes mad science zombies uniquely disturbing is how they retain aspects of their former intelligence while being driven by unnatural impulses. Most frightening is how they represent humanity's own meddling with death coming back to haunt us, embodying the consequences of scientific progress without ethical restraint. Train to Busan depicts situational zombies, infected humans who transform in different ways depending on environmental factors. Most noticeably, these zombies become docile in darkness but viciously aggressive in light. What makes situational zombies particularly interesting is how they create complex strategic challenges for survivors who must understand and exploit the zombies' behavioral patterns to survive. Unlike traditional zombies that behave consistently, situational zombies force constant adaptation and create moments of both intense action and tense quiet as conditions change. Most frightening is how their unpredictable nature removes any sense of safety, as what worked against them in one scenario might fail catastrophically in another. Return of the Living Dead presents the chemical zombies, reanimated corpses created by a military chemical weapon called trioxin. Unlike Romero zombies, these undead possess intelligence, can speak, and feel an agonizing hunger for human brains that drives their actions. What makes chemical zombies uniquely terrifying is their indestructibility. They cannot be killed by headshots and will reanimate even when completely dismembered. Most disturbing is how they retain their human consciousness and memories while being driven by uncontrollable hunger, creating existential horror as victims remain aware of their monstrous transformation. The zombies' explicit explanation that they eat brains to make the pain of being dead go away adds a dimension of suffering that makes them both threatening and tragic. Planet Terror features mutant zombies, humans transformed by a biochemical weapon into evolving creatures with unpredictable mutations. Unlike traditional zombies, these beings develop unique physical changes including enhanced abilities and grotesque deformities. What makes mutant zombies particularly frightening is their unpredictability. Survivors never know what new threats might emerge as the infection progresses. Most disturbing is how the mutations pervert human biology in creative and horrific ways, representing our fears of contamination and bodily corruption. The military origin of the biochemical agent taps into anxieties about government experiments gone wrong and weapons development without adequate safeguards. The Serpent and the Rainbow explores voodoo zombies. Humans transformed not by infection, but through ritualistic practices rooted in Haitian folklore. Unlike most zombie types, these individuals aren't dead but exist in a state of conscious paralysis, aware of their surroundings while under another's control. What makes voodoo zombies uniquely disturbing is how they represent a fate potentially worse than death. Complete loss of autonomy while maintaining awareness. Most frightening is how they ground the zombie concept in actual cultural practice and pharmacological possibilities, suggesting this form of zombification might be disturbingly real. The colonial exploitation of these practices in the film reflects historical patterns of Western appropriation of Caribbean spiritual traditions. Zombieland presents the comedy zombie, undead threats that serve as both genuine monsters and vehicles for humor. While maintaining their danger, these zombies exist in a world that acknowledges the absurdity of the apocalypse. What makes comedy zombies interesting is how they allow exploration of zombie tropes with self-awareness, often subverting expectations for comedic effect. Unlike purely horrific zombies, these create tonal contrasts that make both the horror and the humor more effective. Most compelling is how comedy zombies often highlight the human capacity for finding meaning and even enjoying catastrophic circumstances, suggesting humanity's resilience in the face of extinction. The Girl with All the Gifts introduces hybrid zombies, a new generation born from infected mothers who maintain their intelligence while sharing aspects of the zombie condition. Unlike traditional zombies, these children represent not humanity's end, but its potential evolution into something new. What makes hybrid zombies particularly fascinating is how they challenge our assumptions about what constitutes humanity and whether transformation must necessarily mean degradation. Most thought-provoking is how they force both characters and viewers to confront prejudices about who deserves comparison and protection when traditional human categories break down. The relationship between a human teacher and a hybrid child creates emotional complexity rarely found in zombie narratives. Army of the Dead features hierarchical zombies, undead organized into a structured society with clear leadership and differentiated roles. Unlike mindless hordes, these zombies operate with coordination and purpose, making them far more dangerous opponents. What makes hierarchical zombies uniquely threatening is how they combine zombie ferocity with human-like organizations, creating an adversary that can adapt and strategize. Most disturbing is how they mirror human societal structures while maintaining predatory instincts, suggesting something unsettlingly familiar within their monstrous society. The presence of a faster, more intelligent alpha zombie leading shambling shamblers creates a complex ecosystem of threats that survivors must navigate. In the Flesh portrays medicated zombies. formerly violent undead who have been partially restored through medical treatment and must reintegrate into society. Unlike most zombie narratives that focus on the outbreak and collapse, this explores the aftermath and potential recovery. What makes medicated zombies fascinating is how they use the zombie condition as a metaphor for marginalization and prejudice, exploring how society treats those perceived as other. Most compelling is how these zombies retain memories of their violent actions while undead, creating complex questions about identity, forgiveness, and redemption. The daily medication regime required to maintain their humanity creates constant tension about potential relapse. World War Z presents pandemic-scale global zombies, infected that operate with swarm intelligence, forming massive waves that overwhelm defenses through sheer numbers. Unlike zombies contained to small areas, these represent a truly existential threat to human civilization worldwide. What makes global zombies uniquely terrifying is their emergent behavior, individually mindless but collectively displaying complex patterns that allow them to overcome obstacles no single zombie could manage. Most frightening is the visual spectacle of thousands of bodies, flowing like liquid through urban environments, creating a sense of unstoppable momentum. The geopolitical dimension of the narrative explores how different cultures and governments would respond to such a crisis, adding depth to the apocalyptic scenario. The Walking Dead features environmental zombies, undead whose condition and behavior are influenced by their surroundings over time. Those in arid regions become desiccated and slower, while those in wet environments grow bloated and more fragile. What makes environmental zombies interesting is how they create a constantly evolving threat landscape as survivors move through different regions or seasons change. Unlike static zombies, these create strategic considerations about which environments might offer advantages against particular zombie variants. Most compelling is how they represent nature's reclamation of both human bodies and civilization, with zombies themselves becoming part of the changed ecosystem. Pontypool introduces language zombies. Humans infected not through bites or contact, but through corrupted language that infects the mind. Unlike physical threats, these zombies represent ideological contagion and the danger of harmful ideas spreading through communication. What makes language zombies uniquely disturbing is how they weaponize our most human trait, our reliance on symbolic communication. Most frightening is how the victims retain awareness as they lose control, experiencing their own linguistic breakdown as certain words trigger the infection's progression. The confined radio station setting creates claustrophobic horror as characters realize their primary tool for warning others is itself the vector for spreading the condition. Dead Snow features Nazi zombies. World War II German soldiers reanimated after decades frozen in snow, returning to terrorize modern visitors to their territory. Unlike mindless zombies, these undead retain military discipline and tactical coordination, making them far more dangerous than shambling corpses. What makes Nazi zombies particularly disturbing is how they combine the horror of the undead with the historical atrocities of the Third Reich, creating a metaphor for how the evils of history never truly die. Most frightening is their purpose-driven nature, not just killing for sustenance, but continuing their wartime mission decades after their deaths. The pristine snow setting creates stark visual contrast with the violence, enhancing the horror through unexpected juxtaposition. The Cabin in the Woods represents ritual zombies. The undead family conjured specifically to fulfill an ancient sacrificial pattern. Unlike random outbreaks, these zombies serve a cosmic purpose within a controlled environment. What makes ritual zombies interesting is how they represent just one option in a catalog of horrors, chosen specifically to match their victims. Most disturbing is the revelation that these zombies aren't a natural occurrence but are manufactured by an organization that views human sacrifice as necessary for continued existence. This meta-commentary on horror tropes creates layers of meaning beyond simple scares, suggesting our cultural fascination with zombies might itself serve deeper psychological or societal purposes. iZombie portrays functional zombies, infected individuals who maintain their intelligence and personality by consuming human brains, temporarily absorbing memories and skills from those they eat. Unlike mindless threats, these zombies pass as humans and integrate into society while managing their condition. What makes functional zombies uniquely interesting is how they transform zombie hunger into a complex moral dilemma rather than mindless appetite. Most compelling is how brain consumption creates a form of post-humanist connection between the living and the dead, with zombies becoming vessels for unresolved stories and justice for the deceased. The procedural format explores how zombies might use their condition constructively, suggesting that transformation doesn't necessarily mean losing humanity. Kingdom features historical zombies. Undead outbreaks set in Korea's Joseon dynasty, combining zombie horror with period political intrigue. Unlike modern zombies battled with guns and technology, these create unique challenges for pre-industrial societies using traditional weapons. What makes historical zombies fascinating is how they explore how different cultural contexts and time periods might respond to undead threats, revealing both universal human reactions and culturally specific approaches. Most interesting is how the class structure of the historical setting creates additional complexity, with elites often sacrificing commoners to protect themselves. The beautiful historical setting creates striking visual contrast with the horror elements, enhancing both through juxtaposition. Black Summer depicts transformation zombies. Newly infected shown in excruciating detail as they die and reanimate within minutes. Unlike immediate transitions, these zombies experience a disturbing death process followed by violent resurrection. What makes transformation zombies particularly terrifying is how they force witnesses to confront the horror of watching loved ones die and return as something else. Most disturbing is the speed of the transformation, creating situations where survivors have no time to process their grief before facing the monster wearing their friend's face. The disorienting camera work during the transformation sequences puts viewers directly into the traumatic experience, creating visceral horror behind simple jump scares. Zombievore features animal zombies, infected creatures beyond humans that create unique threats with their natural abilities enhanced by zombie rage. Zombie dogs maintain their speed and pack tactics, while zombie birds can spread infection across wide areas. What makes animal zombies uniquely frightening is how they combine the unpredictability of wild creatures with zombie persistence, creating threats that exploit ecological niches humans can't easily defend. Most disturbing is how they represent the complete collapse of the natural order, with humanity losing its position at the top of the food chain. The variety of animal zombies creates diverse threat profiles that prevent survivors from developing a single effective defense strategy. Overlord presents War Zombies. Soldiers transform through Nazi experiments to create unstoppable troops for the Third Reich. Unlike natural outbreaks, these zombies represent purposeful weaponization of the undead for military advantage. What makes war zombies particularly disturbing is how they represent the dehumanization inherent in both warfare and unethical experimentation, creating monsters from those already trained to kill. Most frightening is their enhanced abilities combined with military training, making them far more effective than civilian zombies. The World War II setting grounds these supernatural horrors in actual historical atrocities, suggesting the real monsters are those willing to commit such experiments. Dawn of the Dead 2004 features consumer zombies, undead drawn to a shopping mall by residual memories of their former lives. Unlike purely instinctual zombies, these retain fragments of their human routines and behaviors. What makes consumer zombies uniquely interesting is how they serve as social commentary on modern consumer culture, suggesting that mindless consumption continues even after death. Most compelling is how survivors begin to see reflections of themselves in the zombies' meaningless repetition of familiar patterns. The mall setting creates both practical advantages for survivors and philosophical questions about what separates their own consumption from that of the mindless creatures outside. Cargo presents Countdown Zombies, infected individuals with a specific time window before full transformation, creating a race against time rather than immediate threat. Unlike instant zombification, this gradual process allows characters to make final meaningful choices while facing inevitable transformation. What makes Countdown Zombies particularly emotional is how they force characters to prepare for their own loss of humanity, creating complex moral decisions about their final actions. Most powerful is how this approach centers human connections even within horror, asking what responsibilities we maintain to others when facing our own end. The Australian outback setting adds environmental threats to the zombie danger, creating layered survival challenges. Resident Evil introduces bioweapon zombies, undead created through corporate experimentation with the T-virus, designed specifically for profit and military applications. Unlike natural outbreaks, these represent calculated corporate malfeasance and the militarization of disease. What makes bioweapon zombies uniquely disturbing is how they come in engineered variants with specific capabilities, from basic shambling zombies to specialized monsters designed for particular combat functions. Most frightening is how they represent the intersection of corporate greed and military power, creating threats that prioritize effectiveness over controllability. The underground laboratory setting emphasizes themes of hidden dangers lurking beneath everyday corporate facades. Shaun of the Dead presents comedic threat zombies, undead that maintain their horror elements while existing in a world that acknowledges the absurdity of the situation. Unlike pure horror zombies, these create space for both genuine scares and humorous observations about apocalyptic scenarios. What makes these zombies uniquely effective is how they allow exploration of human foibles and relationships against the backdrop of societal collapse. Most interesting is how the film suggests modern life already contains zombie-like elements, with people shuffling through meaningless routines before the actual apocalypse. The pub setting creates both a realistic shelter choice and commentary on British drinking culture as a response to crisis. Wormwood features fuel source zombies, undead whose breath contains flammable gas that can power vehicles in a resource-scarce apocalypse. Unlike purely threatening zombies, these create a complex relationship where the living must capture and use zombies for survival. What makes fuel source zombies uniquely interesting is how they transform the undead from simple threats into valuable resources, creating moral questions about exploitation even of monsters. Most compelling is how survivors must balance the danger of keeping zombies captive against the practical benefits they provide. The Mad Max-inspired Australian wasteland setting enhances themes of resource scarcity and improves solutions in the face of societal collapse. The Crazies portrays rage-infected humans driven to violence by a military bioweapon that destroys impulse control rather than killing its victims. Unlike traditional zombies, the infected retain their intelligence and can use tools and weapons while pursuing murderous urges. What makes the rage-infected particularly terrifying is how they target loved ones first, turning the most intimate relationships into sources of greatest danger. Most disturbing is how victims remain conscious of their actions but unable to control their violent impulses, creating psychological horror alongside physical threats. The small town setting creates additional tension as tight-knit communities become hunting grounds where everyone knows they're hunters. Game of Thrones presents fantasy zombies. The Whites, reanimated corpses controlled by supernatural White Walkers in a medieval fantasy setting. Unlike science-based zombies, these are explicitly magical in nature and serve a direct purpose. What makes fantasy zombies uniquely frightening is how they combine traditional zombie threats with magical elements that defy conventional defenses, requiring specific countermeasures like dragon glass or Valyrian steel. Most disturbing is their silent, implacable nature and the way they preserve the wounds that killed them, creating an army that displays the horrific violence of its creation. The winter setting enhances their threat as natural conditions favor the dead over the living. Day of the Dead features evolving zombies, undead that show signs of retaining memories and developing rudimentary problem-solving skills over time. Unlike static threats, these zombies demonstrate potential for adaptation and learning. What makes evolving zombies particularly disturbing is how they suggest the possibility that the undead could eventually develop enough intelligence to organize against survivors while maintaining their predatory nature. Most frightening is the implication that zombies aren't simply mindless obstacles but potential competitors for dominance in a post-human world. The underground military bunker setting creates claustrophobic tension as characters realize nowhere is truly safe from an adaptive threat.